Welcome back to the Visually Hidden Podcast. I'm Peter O'Brien, and once again joining me is Mr. Stephen Bendler.
Hello.
And our own personal French connection, Mademoiselle Anne Milleville.
Bonjour, hi.
It's a new year, and a new year brings new films, and not just new films in the sense of like production, what's being released, but just new films that you hear about and new films that you experience. You know, this is kind of the award season, and all of the award films have to be released by the end of the previous year. Like, that's why they wait until Christmas Day to release stuff, so they have their full week in New York and Los Angeles theaters, and they qualify for the awards, specifically the Academy Awards. Have you guys caught anything new lately?
In the theater? No. I want to this week. I want to try to see Night Swim, the new Blumhouse horror film.
I don't get to the movie theater as often as I would like. I really wanted to try to see that new Godzilla movie. I've heard really good things about Godzilla -1.
Yeah, I heard it's pretty good.
I heard it's really good, and I've been waiting for a really good Godzilla movie for a while now. And you go to the movies like every week.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything of note lately?
Oh, yeah. Because, as you said, I go minimum twice a week to the theater. So recently I watched Wonka, the film with Timothée Chalamet and by Paul King. And actually, it was a good surprise because I really loved Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think that's the title in English by Tim Burton. And I expected a lot from Wonka, and actually I wasn't disappointed. So I recommend it to you. I also watched The Dream Scenario with Nicolas Cage. And it's pretty new here, but I heard that you had it in theater in October or November last year, but it just came out here in France. It was a good surprise. You know, Nicolas Cage, it's always a surprise, but not always good. And this one, it was a good one. So I recommend it too. I'm just telling you the international movies, but I watched many.
Yeah, you said you really like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. How do you feel about the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Have you seen that one?
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I know.
Steve, I just saw like the smoke shoot out of his ears.
Oh, man. That's, listen, I love Tim Burton, man. And Johnny Depp is my favorite actor of all time, but I haven't even showed my kids the Tim Burton one. They all have to be raised on the Gene Wilder first. And then when they get to a certain age, I'll like, now you can see this. Once you know which one is the real one, then you can entertain this other version if you like. I own a copy of it, but again, I almost never watched that movie.
This is Steve's brainwashing boot camp where he's cultivating the generation of yesteryear.
That's it.
Today.
And we've got a couple graduates. We're doing well.
Numbers are up. It's good. Lately, I've actually been catching up on some television. I finally started watching The Big Bang Theory. One of the things that I've always found fascinating, especially in later years, because when you're watching a show, you're into it. You're checking in weekly with these characters, and I haven't checked in with a show in a long time. I usually waited for the DVD or waited for the streaming or waited for the series to conclude so I can watch it at my leisure and my schedule. Once you get older and you start experiencing shows in that binge format, you really kind of get to see the arc of these characters. You get to see where they start in episode 1 of season 1 or the pilot, and then where they wind up by the series finale. And sometimes it's a grand journey. Sometimes it is like over a decade in the making. So I'm very excited to see where these characters in the Big Bang Theory land, especially some of them with the more unique personalities, where they wind up after 12 years of growth. And if there is growth, I don't know. I feel like there's some opportunities that have already been explored among them. So that's where I'm at, though. I'm smack in the middle, or approaching the middle of the Big Bang Theory, and I'm enjoying it. One thing that we talked about previously last week was the film Psycho, and specifically acting and Anthony Perkins and his performance and following direction and all of that. And I just wanted to jump back to that really quick because a moment ago I had mentioned character arcs over the course of a television series, and the Psycho film series has 4 films, which again, the character of Norman Bates is a constant through that, and it's a consistent performance from Anthony Perkins. Norman Bates does have a pretty interesting character arc when you see where he begins in the first film and lands in the fourth film.
I didn't like the evolution. Really, I love the character at the during the original movie, but then for me the evolution doesn't really make sense. That's my opinion. I know you don't share it, but
So you didn't like his character arc?
exactly right. Yeah, that's the thing. I didn't like the development of the character through the movies.
That's an interesting thing because the reason why I don't really appreciate the second one is because at the end of the day, he ends up exactly back where he started. Not to say that I don't like 2 at all. I appreciate a lot of things about 2, but it felt like at the end, it's like, okay, well, what do we do? All right, we just give him another mom, stick her in the bed, and then he goes back to being what he once was. And it's just like, but you kind of killed all that momentum, all that stuff that he was doing in the first half of this film. And then I feel like when he got to the third film, that's when it started to really like, okay, they're taking him in a bit of a different place. And that's why I appreciated that one a little bit more.
This is where I start to think of it as an arc, and I look back at all 4 films and I see where he is and where he lands. I think 2 is actually pretty good in that regard. I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. However, Norman is a sick person, and he's basically relapsing. So you got to think of it in terms of like that. Like, his sickness isn't drugs or alcohol. His sickness is psychological, and it's murder, and it's codependency, and it's insecurity. It's all of these different things. I mean, it's also it's studio bullshit, retconning and all that other stuff. But if you look at it from a character arc point of view,
Yeah, no, and I agree with that.
a lot of people try to quit cigarettes and they go right back to it. It's like they have like a good run and then they fall back, and it takes them like 4 or 5 times. And so I feel like looking at Norman in terms of that kind of makes 2 make a little bit more sense and makes his arc that much more interesting, because yes, he was doing good and then he relapsed, and then he's doing good again, but then he has a little, he has these different challenges in part 3. And then when he gets to 4, we get to see beyond the first movie back in time, and we get to see where he is. So it's like the extreme ends of that arc are present in 4, and you really get to see, with the information from 1, 2, and 3, you really get to see how far he's come and how hard his struggle has been. And that's why he's like on the phone talking on the radio, because he's still struggling with that relapse effect, with that call back to mother. So I feel like when you think of it in terms of addictive personality or situations like that, he's not your typical boogeyman. He's not Michael Myers, who's pure evil.
Yeah.
He's not Jason Voorhees, who's a supernatural entity, or Freddy Krueger. He's an actual person that has relatable problems, albeit, extreme.
No, I agree with that. And that's a great point. So I think if you could have came up with a better, meaning them, if they could have came up with a better way for him to relapse, like, so maybe he kills Vera Miles, and then he puts her in the bed, because he's something has to fill that void. Anything I think would have been better than retconning characters and changing plot, because I'm good with a relapse, because he's a fucking psycho, right? So that's, I guess, the creative writing process, right? Of how do we tell this story? How do we tell this arc, but then keep it interesting and not feel like we have to go back and retread things we've already done.
Despite the pressure from the studio and the production, you can have something great coming out of it. For example, it's not something I'm going to say about Psycho. I wanted to talk about Jaws, because for Jaws 2, I heard, I'm not sure it's true, but I heard that the main actor, the one who plays Brody, wasn't really happy to be in the second opus. But they did something great with his character, the development of it, because you understand that he was really shocked about what happened in the first one, and for him, the worst was behind him. And it happens again, and this time it's on his sons. I don't know, I thought that the character arc was really good in Jaws, which was not for me for Psycho. That's the way I feel.
Well, I think that's also kind of an interesting thing. Psycho is based on a book and it's an individual movie. Jaws is based on a book and it was an individual movie, but then it became franchised, it became serialized, it became installments. And that's what I was saying before about a television series. You get to follow the character's arc throughout several episodes, sometimes several seasons. With a movie, you really just have that one shot. And then if the movie's successful, they will build it up and develop it further. It's not always in the cards, and it's not always part of the plan. It's, like pre-MCU movies were usually standalone adventures. So having a character arc was really important for the one film, but then as it got into a broader story, there became struggles. And you can see, like a lot of times, there is no growth among characters, and sometimes they really have to work a little harder to make it. If you look at the James Bond films, James Bond is pretty much the man, start to finish, all the time. But when you get into the Daniel Craig movies, it seems like they worked a little bit harder to give that character some challenges and some backstory and some real arc.
Yeah.
With regard to Jaws, I'm going to bring it back to Mrs. Brody. In the first one, she's kind of just the new housewife in town. In the second one, she's getting involved politically in her community. And then in the fourth one, she's the main character. She's the protagonist. So I feel like her arc is really the spotlight of that series. Brody, yes, he does have a pretty okay one between his two films, but Ellen Brody, I think, is really the arcing character of that series. I feel like Ellen really is the one who displays growth and ends in a different spot than she starts.
I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I totally agree with you. And I remember the first time I watched Jaws, we talked about it, and I told you that for me it was a man movie, and it was frustrating because I really liked Mrs. Brody's character, and I felt that she was more than just a supporter of her husband. So I'm really glad in the second one she's more important, but in the fourth it's about her, and you see that, and that's a very good development, because you see that the strength she has in the fourth one, you could see it in the first episode, the first opus. So yeah, that's a good development. Jaws, it's a good example for character development, really.
For those of you listening, if you're curious about exactly what we're talking about, you can go check out the technical difficulties episode of our podcast series. I believe it's number 6. And in there, we discuss the entire Jaws franchise. Stephen, as an actor, which you are, how do you approach a character arc? Like of course, in a play or in a film, it's the writer's job. But as an actor, how do you approach a character arc?
You have to figure out who's the character, right? So for the actor, who is this person you're playing? What do they want? What's important to them? And if the writing is good, where are they going to go? Right. So right now I'm in a new play. We're in rehearsals, and my character is just a blue collar worker. An event happens to him, and it could break a lot of guys, but he manages to keep his humor. He manages to keep his sense of self, and he doesn't let this event change him in a way that it would change most people. So then my approach to it is, well, he's got to have some kind of rage about it. He's got to have some kind of negative feeling. But now how do I maintain who this guy is, and then sprinkle in that feeling without making him bitter or jaded or making him something that he's not? So it's a balancing act. So what I do is I get a script, I read it, and then if I want to, if I like the part, I audition for the part. Assuming I get the part, I go read it again, and then I'll sit with the director, and I'll say, hey, listen, this is how I see this character and all these events unfolding. What do you see? And then what I'll try to do is I'll bring that, what I want and what I think is necessary for the part, and I'll take the input of the director, and I'll try to fuse those two things together. So to make a happy working experience, like I get to try to do some of what I want to bring to the table, and then try to infuse some of the ideas from the director, and then create a happy medium. And then you have to build that together, because if you don't see eye to eye with the director, or can at least come to some kind of a compromise, it's going to show in the work, and it's going to suffer. And then the arc might not be there. It might fall apart, or it might land wrong, or, the way the character is received after the arc is completed is not going to land right.
I think that's kind of an interesting point too. And that's why I wanted to start with you from an actor point of view, because you're really kind of the final hurdle when it comes to the arc, but you're also the most important element in executing that arc. I mean, it all starts with the writer, and then it goes through the director, and then it goes to the actor who does the performance. And as a writer, how do you approach an arc? And do you usually have an arc for all of your characters, or just your main character, or your ensemble, or your group of characters? Does every character need an arc?
For me, yes. But my main work is episodic story, as you said. So for an episodic story, you have to know your character from the start to the end and their background, because it helps to write the way they talk, the way they react to any situation.
There's a number of ways to infuse character into the writing, but at the end of the day, yeah, it does come down to the actor's performance. The director has their influence and their guidance, but they're also influencing and guiding all of the different actors and all of the different aspects of the production, whether it's a film or a play.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really up to the actor and their personalized, invested approach to that character that really makes it a success or not. And not the film or the production a success, but just the character a success. Like, are they arcing? Are they landing where they need to land? And are they hitting all the points in between? It's like when you're playing Super Mario Brothers and there's the string of coins in the air. And if you jump right, you can get all the coins and land on the top of the flagpole. And that's when you've nailed it. And there are sometimes you fall short and you miss the coins and you come in at the bottom of the flagpole and it's like, okay, you get 100 instead of 5,000.
Yeah, but that's an excellent point, because your director has the overall vision of what's going on.
Have you worked in a production where, for you, Pete, you're only the director, you're not the writer, so you have to understand what the writer meant and also to spread the idea to the cast? You know what I'm saying? When you're just a messenger in a way.
There hasn't really ever been a script that was given to me that's like, oh, I got to go film this. But there have been situations where I've worked on like a documentary and I have not written history. I have not rewritten history. I am trying to capture history and or convey history to an audience. And so in that regard, like, it's already been written and I just have to present it, or it's happening and I have to capture it and then present it. Another situation that I've come across is like, I've done some music videos where I have not written the song. I have not written the music. I've heard it and I've liked it. And I've tried to kind of break it down to what I think it's about. And then I have to work with the band or the artist or the songwriter and see like, okay, do you agree with this approach? This is your song. This is your music video. Is this what you want to convey? Because this is what I'm seeing in my head when I listen to it. And then we work together to try to come to a mutual result. And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
So this week's VHS film recommendation was Bad Boys from 1983, starring Sean Penn, directed by Rick Rosenthal. And I feel like this film is a perfect example of a character arc. If I had to explain a character arc to somebody, I would probably pick this film, because Sean Penn, he plays the main character, Mick O'Brien, and where he starts and where he ends the film are two completely different points, and the trajectory is actually very, very subtle, and it's very believable, just the way in which this character changes throughout the course of the 2-hour film. And it only takes 2 hours to get there. It doesn't take 3 films. It's not Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. It's very, very tight, and it doesn't take a season of episodes or seasons of a series to get there. It's really, really just a good, solid, tight performance that carries the entire movie. Again, he is the main character, and we weave in and out of his story because we step away to check in with some other characters who have their own arcs going on as well, specifically his girlfriend and his enemy. And you just get to see their different trajectories. And I feel like this film really stands out in that regard. It is one of my favorite films, which is also why I selected it for the VHS recommendation series. I love this film. I grew up watching it, and it has just been with me for a long time. I try to share it with as many people as possible Impossible, which is another reason why I went ahead and added it to the VHS series. A lot of people know Sean Penn, especially after he won the Academy Award for Mystic River. And this is really early in his career. I believe it's his third film, but it's his first leading role. He was in Taps, which he's probably the best performance in Taps. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but if you watch Taps, that's Sean Penn's first movie, and you can really see, okay, there's something with that guy. And then he follows it up with Jeff Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is a complete 180 from anywhere anybody has ever been before. And then he comes around with Bad Boys and Mick O'Brien. And this is really, you can just see there's like no question about this particular man's talent and what he's capable of. And Bad Boys is just a great showcase for what he can bring to a character, I think, because if you watch Bad Boys from a superficial point of view, I feel like it's very easy to just be dismissive of it. Again, because that arc is so subtle, you could miss it until it creeps up on you. But I feel like if you're watching the character, watching the actor, you see there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. Honestly, I'm just going to say this. You know how Ted Turner, the multimillionaire, he wanted to own Gone with the Wind. That's why the Turner Broadcasting System, TNT, TBS, Turner Classic Movies, he owns this vast catalog of movies that came along with his acquisition of his pursuit to own Gone with the Wind. And if I could own one movie, it would be Bad Boys, just so I could share it with the world freely.
So cute.
Yeah, how do you follow that?
You don't follow that. That's why we gave you a moment of silence.
Mic drop.
The only reason I've ever seen this movie or heard of it is because of you, Pete. I mean, you recommended this movie to me, I don't know how many years back now it's been. I watched it, and then I liked it so much that I went out and I bought a Blu-ray copy of it. I watched it again last night just for the conversation, just so it was fresh in my mind. I remembered, the majority of it. And as I was watching, I was like, oh, yeah, that happened. Oh, yeah, and then that happens. But I've seen it probably 4 times now. It really is a great movie. It's really gritty. It's down and dirty. It doesn't feel like a polished Hollywood movie, which I appreciate in this one instance. And Sean Penn is obviously one of the best, to ever do it. And just to see him, like you said, to do something like this and then Spicoli like back to back, that's range, man. I feel like if you look at Sean Penn's career, he seems to go more towards the unpolished roles and unpolished films, which I tend to appreciate.
Okay, so for me, it's a great teenage movie from the 80s. It was my first time watching it. I never heard of it before, so thank you for the discovery, Pete. Because for me, Bad Boys, it's a movie with Will Smith, not with Sean Penn. So yeah, I never heard of the director neither. So Rick Rosenthal, didn't know any of his film. It was really pleasant to watch. I enjoyed it. The music, the actors, the scenario, the development, everything there. So otherwise, I would say that it's an efficient movie. Efficient in the term that you don't waste time to understand the context. You don't have useless shots. Everything is really precise. I felt that way. And especially the first scene, you just started the movie and right away you're into the action and you understand the context. So I really like that. Probably a movie I would have loved to watch when I was a teen. Now it's just a pleasant movie, but probably it would have been my favorite movie when I was a teen. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely speaks to a very distinct demographic. And I feel like maybe if you miss the window on this film, which I would say is like, probably anywhere from like 13 to 30, if you miss that window, then it loses some of its significance and some of its relevance. And by that point, you're probably connecting more with the older characters like Mr. Daniels and Reni Santoni's character. You're connecting more with the guards and the counselors than you are so much with the main characters and their struggles. And so it's still enjoyable, I think, if you catch it at an older age, but it's probably has a lot more impact for younger audiences.
I think the music, Bill Conti, he's done some big ones, Rocky, Karate Kid. I think it was just what the movie needed. It was understated. It was quiet. There was some beauty to it, and you didn't need to do a whole lot here. And I think he knew that, and I think he just let the story take the lead. And I think just the music was a nice compliment to it. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
I really like the fact that the music is quite soft. And it's like what we said about A Clockwork Orange. I like the fact that, and Pete said that in the VHS episode, it's that the violence has a function to highlight something. It's not violence for violence. So I can understand that someone who was a victim of those kind of stuff can be hurt watching it. But for me, it's more to explain the context and to symbolize their survival mode. You know, the fact that they're having a hard routine for everyday life.
I love the opening theme that plays over the opening credits because it does start soft and it does start innocent, but then it has this build up throughout it. Throughout the opening credits, you get this experience, this climactic wave in the music, and then there aren't a whole lot of like different themes. It's not a vast score where like every character has their own theme. It's not Star Wars where it's like a symphony or Peter and the Wolf, where all these different characters are represented by these different elements of the score. The theme over the opening credits really is the musical representation of this film and this story. And then it's just dropped in here and there with these little cues that echo it or extrapolate it or build on it. It's never as present as it is in the opening credits. It's really just the echo of it throughout the rest of the film. And during the opening credits, in addition to the titles on the screen, there are flashes of photographs of these young boys, and all of the pictures in the opening credits are the young boys throughout the film. And so you just kind of get a sense to see like, oh wow, yeah, there's their innocence, and that's tied into the music. And then it builds and it builds until, you know, we reach the picture of Sean Penn at the end of the opening credits, and then it picks up with his character on the streets of Chicago purse snatching to go buy a gun. And it's like, wow, how did we get from there to there? And how did the music get from that soft opening to that crescendo? And that's what we see and that's what we experience. So I think it's also just a bit of subtle brilliance in the filmmaking.
The subtlety is what stands out to me the most, and the softness. Against, I like, as Anna was saying, there's some violent scenes and some violent imagery in some parts of this movie, and then it's a nice opposition, I think. You know, let's talk about performances, I guess, for a second. Ali Sheedy, really nice performance in here. You know, really, she did some really nice subtle things. She was soft, she was vulnerable, she was tough when she had to be. I think, you know, for me, the first time I saw it, you know, when she gets attacked, you know, I had that knot in the pit of my stomach, that terrible feeling, and I really felt for her. My heart went out to her, and I didn't want that to happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I, you know, obviously, and I didn't, you know, in the ripple effect, have that happen to O'Brien. And I think her performance really was just what it called for this time around. So, you know, now I enjoy Ali Sheedy in a number of things, but I think this is a really nice performance for her, especially very early on. That
moment, that really is part of the turning point for the character of Mick. I mean, that's really, up until that point, you know, he's in the reformatory, and he has his altercation with Viking and Tweety, and he becomes the barn boss. He's running the show, and, you know, he's hot shit. But then that happens, and that's what really kind of breaks him down. You know, that's what brings him back down to reality. It's like, oh shit, these actions, she got attacked because I wasn't there to protect her. She got attacked because of what I did to Paco and Paco's family. Like, that's where the dots really start to connect. And when he ultimately breaks out and he goes to her and he sees her, it's like, up until that point, it's like, okay, fine. But when she turns around and sees him, and then he sees her, and like, he just like erupts into tears, you know, he gets the phone call and he says like, I just feel like crying. And Ramon Herrera, he says, you know, I've seen people cry before, whatever, you know, like, do what you gotta do. But he doesn't cry. He just gets angry and he goes to her. And it's not until he sees her, until he sees the result of his actions, that he cries. And he fucking sees like, oh my God,
no,
the one thing that I care about in this world, I did that too.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the power of the film. What a beautiful moment, and it was really captured well, because that's it, right? That's the turning point, and they're lenient on him when he gets back, because they finally got to him. You know, they broke through and saw a little bit of humanity. I mean, I personally believe that O'Brien felt bad about killing the kid by accident, but he's not going to say it. He's too much of a hard
Oh,
ass,
yeah.
right? To have a feeling, to have an emotion. And I think that they knew that, you know, they knew that deep down he feels bad, but he just can't bring himself to admit that he feels bad. And I think once he came, like you said, face to face with the repercussions of his actions, they saw the breakthrough that they knew he would eventually have, and he needed to have. The relationship between him and Ramon, right?
Yeah.
It's just one of the nicer, I think, relationships between an older mentor type figure or father figure and a younger guy.
I wanted to say that I don't agree with you, Pete, when you say in the VHS episode that Mick is a sociopath. I really don't feel that way. For me, it's really not. Maybe I don't have the right definition of a sociopath, but for me, it's someone who has trouble to be with other people. And all along the movie, you understand that it's not the case because, first of all, he has a friend, he has a girlfriend, and when he comes to the institute, he meets another young boy in the bus, and you understand that in a short time he has a connection with this guy, and then he has a special relationship with his roommate. So this is, for me, the definition of a non-sociopath people, you know. So I don't know. I would be curious.
To be fair,
Yeah.
I said borderline.
Oh, okay. You're right. Okay.
Because he goes up to that edge where, yeah, he doesn't care about human. Like, he will beat up an elderly man in a dark alley.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about that man. He will shove that guy's wife to the curb. He will break a window and steal a purse. Like, he's on that line of, like, he could go this way or he could go that way. That's what Ramon tries to convey to him. It's like, listen, man, you're at a point right now. How you never did time before is a miracle, right? That's what he tells him. Like, he was going to end up there no matter what, based on his current trajectory, his current character, his current actions. Based on those decisions he makes, he can continue on to the big house.
Yeah.
It's up to him. Life's full of choices, and you got to make good ones. So I just wanted to clarify, though, borderline was the key word.
You're right, Pete. The nuance is important. So you're right. But yeah, I agree with Steve on the fact that for sure he feels about killing Paco's brother. He has regrets on that. But for him, it was an accident. And it's true, it was an accident. He didn't do it on purpose. So, and also the fact that he doesn't cry, for me, it shows something that is subtly understood at the beginning. The relationship he has with his mother, you understand that there is no father around. So he's kind of the man of the house. So maybe he's not used to cry like that, you know. So he feels like crying, but he won't do it, even if he has an adult on his side to say that's okay, you can do it. He won't do it. But that's why it's so emotional. It's such an emotional scene when he cries in front of his girlfriend when he sees what happened to her. It makes the scene more powerful. And also the relationship he has with Raymond, and the other guy is Jean or Jen. I don't remember.
Yeah, Gene. Mr. Daniels. He doesn't like anything else.
Okay.
Right.
So yeah, I like the relationship he has with those guys because you feel like they are the mentor he needed to be in the right path. And you understand at the end that, as you said, the evolution of the characters is thanks to those mentors he probably needed and he missed because he doesn't have a father around. I mean, that's my understanding of it. And that's what makes this movie so powerful.
No, I agree. I think Mick feels a lot of things and he doesn't know how to let all that out. I think he feels when his friend, when Alan Ruck gets shot, I think he feels something for it, you know. I think he feels terrible that he kills this kid because that was never in the cards, right? And then you have that moment, I think, when the other inmate, the little kid that he comes in with, gets thrown over the balcony and killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a fucking slap in the face wake up call. Like, wow. It's got real quick in here, and he establishes he's got to save himself, right? He's got to. These guys are going to come for me next, and I got to be ready. And he is, and that's a fantastic scene. Viking and Tweety specifically are bullies inside this world that he's just entered. And then when you see that moment when Horowitz decides to stick up for himself against Viking, and he starts that whole food fight, you could see the worry I think he realizes he doesn't want to be that example. Like I did what I did with the sodas and whatever, but that was me. Don't do the things that I'm doing. I did that for survival. You're doing it just because he called your name. I didn't realize it the last time I watched it, but this time I found that to be a fast. Like obviously, there's the obvious. He's worried about his buddy, but then I think there's that thing like he's starting to feel like a mentorship to him almost, and like almost like a father figure, which is interesting because it's something he didn't have before, but now he feels almost like a responsibility for this kid. And yeah, and that's where that's like, so there's even more of that growth for O'Brien there.
Well, and I think the interesting thing that we talked about a moment ago, I asked Anne, like, do all of the characters need to arc? And I asked you, Steve, like, as a supporting character, do you need to arc? I mean, if you watch this movie, there are different characters that have different arcs, but some of them have already happened before the movie even begins. Their character has arced. Like Ramon, like he was into that gang shit half his life, and now we see him at the end of his arc where he is the counselor and he is helping the troubled youth. So he's already had his arc for his character, but we know this because of exchanges. I don't feel like all of the characters have to arc because we're following the main character, which in this case is O'Brien. And he is the one who has to arc and he has to change. Otherwise, it's just a big waste of time. Like Viking, he is always Viking. Even at towards the very end, it's like you can have time in solitary or more time on your sentence, and he takes the extra time because he wants to stay in the game and he wants to get Mick. He doesn't see, oh shit, Mick fucked me up and he fucked Tweety up and he fucked this guy Paco up on the outside. Like he just sees, red and he's just going after the red. He doesn't see the big picture. And even Horowitz, he firebombed the bowling alley and he got put in there. And then what does he do? He fucking blows up Viking, And so like he doesn't see what Mick is seeing. Like his rehabilitation is failing. Even Tweety, he gets out and then they get the news article that he was killed in a holdup. So clearly he didn't change either. Like the system failed. Like none of these other characters, like Mick is the only one who is having a strong arc. Paco does have an arc too, but it's not as strong and it's not as significant and it's not as beneficial.
Yeah.
Paco was on the outside and he put himself in a compromising position out of revenge and out of hate and spite and malicious intent. He was encouraging his friend to actually kill JC.
Yeah, I think Paco wanted to get caught.
Oh, he totally did.
That's why he's not going to kill her. He's not a dummy. But he wanted to get put in, because he wants to go get Mick, and it's just like, okay, pal.
Yeah, and that's like the inverse of Mick's arc.
Yeah.
So Paco is arcing, but in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I'm very glad that you had introduced me to this movie years back, and then clearly that's why I own it. And I've in turn I showed it to my brother, and he enjoyed it. So I pass it on to people. So you've had an effect. It's a ripple effect. My
great hope is that there will come a day when I can talk to somebody about a film called Bad Boys and not have to say, not the 1995 Will Smith version, the 1983 Sean Penn version. I feel like I always have to clarify what I'm talking about because everybody knows the Bad Boys franchise, with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And the fact that it overshadows this film, it hurts my soul a little bit just because this one was first. This one is like, the namesake. It has nothing to do with the other one. The other one's riding on the coattails of the Cops television series and the theme song for that show, which has nothing to do with the movie. It's just marketing bullshit. It just, they couldn't have come up with a better title for that franchise.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I have not seen not one moment of any of those Bad Boy movies.
Me neither.
So, and I'm probably never going to watch those movies because I have no fucking interest in that. I just don't.
I think the main theme of this movie is really topical. I don't know in America, but in Europe, we have more and more issues with underage people doing very bad stuff. And sometimes we don't really know what to do with them.
Maybe there's a sequel.
Yeah, so maybe they should do something,
Sean Penn now is in Ramon's job.
And maybe the Viking will be one of the mentors or something. Yeah.
No, Viking's still in there.
The same hair.
He's still in there with the soda and the half a face.
He's taking the extra time. Yeah, he doesn't ever want to leave.
No.
Yeah, no, I think the overall cast is really good, and I was a little upset to see, like, some of the other smaller characters didn't go on. Like the character who played Horowitz, the actor who played Horowitz, he did a great job, and he really just kind of like had his like little moment in the 80s. He's done a handful of things, and then he decided it's not for me, but he's great.
Yeah.
One of my favorite exchanges in the movie is when Mick is like trying to read Call of the Wild, and he's like, "Man, I don't understand any of this stuff." And Horowitz says, "Well, maybe you have a reading disability."
Yeah.
It's like what? Like you can't read. Like just the sharpness of the character that comes through in his performance is really, really good.
Yeah, he was a highlight. I think one of the charms of the movie is that everyone was believable. Like there wasn't one character who like, I don't buy this guy as this character. Or I don't buy this girl as this character. I think everybody was completely believable.
And the film doesn't pull any
Yeah.
punches. Like it really shows like the eye-opening experience of the characters.
Yeah, like for me, believability, it really is a massive thing. Like if I can't buy into the fact that someone is doing what they're doing on screen, it just pulls me right out of it. And the fact that I bought all these kids as, delinquents and, drug dealers or murderers or whatever it is. I mean, I think that that's a testament to the casting process there. Whoever, Rosenthal and whoever did the casting on that, I think they did a bang up job because it sells the movie.
And I'm actually curious though, for you as a feminist, what was your experience watching this like mostly male driven film, and the one main female character suffers a very realistic threat towards women? What was your experience with that in that regard, watching it as a woman, as a single woman living in a big city?
Yeah, she's a victim of something that happens too often nowadays, unfortunately, and that's probably what we are scared the most as a woman. As I will always say, I would prefer to be killed than to be raped. That's something that talks to me, of course. And that's why her performance, the performance of Ali Sheedy, is really great, because you understand that she understands what's going to happen, because unfortunately when someone is behind you for too long in the street at night, I think every woman knows how it feels. You know what is going to happen, and I love the scene at the police station when, one by one the policemen ask the guy to present himself, to introduce himself, and when it's Paco's time, Paco's moment, she knows and she says it's him, because I can understand what she feels at that moment. But to answer your question, for me, it's not a man movie. I told you that about Jaws, for example. When I first watched it, it was really a man movie for me, because when it's about a shark, everybody can relate to it. But when it's about a prison, we know it's by gender. So for me, it's not a man movie, because it's about something that happens in a male prison. It would be weird to have women involved in it. The only thing I can say, I'm surprised that the mothers are not so much involved in the story. I mean, the one of Mick, you can understand that their relationship is a bit complicated, but the Paco's mother, you can expect that she's more involved in what happens to Paco. But that's okay if the director or the writer decided not to talk much about it, because it's not the core of the story, so I understand that. So for me, it's not a anti-feminist movie. That's the opposite, especially the way that Mick reacts to what happens to his girlfriend, the way he feels about her, and also the way Ali Sheedy and the guy who plays her father talk to each other. So you see that men can relate to what happens to a girl, to a woman. So for me, it's not an anti-feminist movie. That's the opposite of it. So I wouldn't say it's a feminist movie, but you understand that woman has a position, are respected in this movie.
This film does paint a very, very crystal clear reality of the situation. I mean, she is taking the train home at night, living in the city, and she is being stalked. So it does heighten that reality that a lot of people, and a lot of women specifically, face day to day.
There is a guy, I think it's on YouTube. There is a guy who just put a costume as a woman, and he walked by in the street even during the day. And when you're a woman, and sometimes you feel like you are meat and you're walking through carnivores that didn't eat for many days, I don't know how to to make you understand that. It's really uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and even
Yeah.
during the day. So you never know. Of course, they look at you like you they're gonna eat you, but probably they won't do it. But you don't know. Maybe one of them is a freak and is gonna act. Is gonna do something against you. You never know. So I understand your feeling as a man. Maybe you can be scared too. But for us, it's all day, all the time. You never know.
I'm going to say this, as a filmmaker, I cannot not talk about this part of the film, but this film is so good and so strong that most people who watch it miss some of the shortcomings within it. And there are some technical problems with the film, but again, it's so strong that most people they're so locked into the character. They're so locked into the moment that they don't notice the equipment that's in the shot. They don't notice the disorienting 180 jump cut that happens in the middle of the fight scene. Like they're locked in. But the one that I love to point out to people, I would show this in some of my film classes, and I would watch the students for their reaction, and it would never come. And then I would go back and ask them, like, did you see the cameraman in the middle of the fight scene? He's smack in the middle of the fight scene with the assistant camera guiding him. There's a full cameraman handheld in the middle of the fight scene, and nobody ever notices him because they're locked into the fight scene.
When you first recommended it and I went and watched it, no fucking idea. I was so locked in and concerned with Mick's well-being, about him getting stabbed or not. I was laser focused on that. I didn't even notice the guy. And then until you said, "Hey, did you notice the cameraman?" And I was like, "What?" I went back and I was like, "Holy shit! The whole two grown men holding a camera." Didn't notice it at all because I was so locked into the storytelling. Another testament to that movie.
There's another moment when Mick, after he gets the cans of soda and he goes into his room, and Viking and Tweety are stalking him, moving in for their attack. And as Mick turns to go into his room, you can see a full light stand like shining on his room. Like it's like right at the very edge of the frame, but you're so focused on the intensity of the moment, the characters and their eye locking, and they are in it. And that's really part of the power of this film, again, is the performances. And they are just so locked into each other that you as an audience member are locked in, and you miss these things. I see them because I'm a filmmaker, and I have like what I call editor eye. And so my eye is constantly scanning every single like pixel of the frame for things that should or should not be there. So it's a little bit different when I watch a movie, but yeah, it's just remarkable.
And I guess you watched it many times. You watched it maybe 1,000 times. So maybe you have an eye on the right things. Why we watched it just once. I mean, I don't know for Steve, but maybe not as much as you did. So that's why maybe we didn't see it. But next time I keep an eye on that.
Oh yeah, this is another film that I've seen. I couldn't even tell you how many times. A lot of people, they will watch a movie once and like check off a box like, yeah, I've seen that. Okay, good. I've seen Lawrence of Arabia. I've seen Ben-Hur. I've seen, It Happened One Night. I've seen Psycho. Good. And they move on with their lives. And me, like, if I like a movie, I keep watching it because I study it and I want to break it down and I want to like fully absorb it and like learn as much as I possibly can. Like I like go in there like I'm mining the movie for power.
Yeah, for me, I think,
and this is one of the movies. Yeah, I've seen it. I don't even know how many times I've seen it.
if I enjoyed it enough to buy it, that says something. Like that, I would want to keep it in my collection and have it at the ready in case I ever want to watch it or ever want to show it to somebody. But I think last night's viewing was number 4.
Yeah, like I said, like I have the VHS that I watched endlessly when it came out in DVD. I got that. I own the digital copy. I own the theatrical one sheet. I love it, and I'm going to keep watching it. Sometimes I'll just throw it on. Sometimes, like if somebody hasn't seen it, I love to share it with them. If they come over for a movie night, like that's always a recommendation. Cannot say enough great things about this film. It's very underrated. If you have a chance to, I highly recommend tracking it down. Sometimes it does pop up on streaming, but of course it's always available to rent or purchase. So Bad Boys 1983, Sean Penn, Rick Rosenthal, Clancy Brown, Esai Morales, Ali Sheedy. Woo. That about does it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Podcast. Next episode, we will be discussing a completely different film, so be sure to check out the VHS series on our YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any of the fun. Steve, you can catch him over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner on Instagram. He's always posting cool and exciting things. Anne and I, of course, are also on Instagram and Letterboxd, so you can follow us there and see what we've been watching and what we think. And until next time, stay out of jail.